Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be boosting our brain power.
Always a good idea.
Right. And joining us for this deep dive is, chuckling, well, me, obviously, but also the incredible insights of Marynês Pereira. Marynês Pereira. She's, well, a bit of a neuroscience guru.
Yeah, I was really blown away by the stuff she's doing.
Me too. Her article, Embrace Genius, Essential Tips to Turbocharge Your Brain, is jam-packed with seriously cool info. But this isn't just about, like, the science of the brain. It's about actionable stuff we can use to, well, to think better.
Totally. It's like she gives you the keys to your own mental upgrade.
Right. And whether you're like a brain hack enthusiast or just starting to, to think about thinking, there's something here for everyone. So, like, buckle up because we are about to unlock some serious brain power. So where do we even start?
Well, Pereira kicks things off with this really cool analogy. She compares the brain to an orchestra.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I love a good analogy.
So each part of your brain is like a unique instrument, right? And just like an orchestra needs a conductor to make beautiful music, our brains rely on neurotransmitters to keep everything in sync.
So the neurotransmitters are like the maestros of our minds.
Exactly. They're these chemical messengers that control, well, pretty much everything, like how motivated we feel, how well we focus, you name it.
Okay, this is already blowing my mind.
Think of it this way. If you're trying to, say, crush a deadline, you want that prefrontal cortex, the conductor up front, to really command the orchestra.
Got it. But that's easier said than done sometimes, right?
Oh, absolutely, especially these days. Pereira even calls our brains easily distracted lions, and she's not wrong.
No kidding. My phone is like surgically attached. I bet that doesn't help. Speaking of distractions, how do we tame those lions, so to speak, and actually focus?
Well, Pereira's got some seriously practical advice. First up, disable those tempting notifications. Like, seriously, just turn them off.
Easier said than done, but point taken.
She's also big on strategic conversations, Set aside dedicated time blocks instead of getting pulled in a million directions at once.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm terrible at that.
And this one might seem simple, but she's a huge fan of just writing things down to clear mental clutter.
Okay, see, those are the actionable steps I love. Stuff you can literally start doing today.
Exactly. But it's not just about those external distractions. It's also about how our brains work internally. Like, have you ever walked into a room and totally blanked on why you were there?
Ugh, don't even get me started. Literally happened this morning. Why does our memory do that?
Well, she uses this really powerful but kind of scary example of a parent forgetting their kid in the car. Total nightmare scenario, right? But it shows how easily our brains just go on autopilot if we always stick to the same routine.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So how do we, like, break free from routine's grip and actually remember things better?
She talks about creating unusual triggers and alerts. For example, instead of just thinking, okay, grab my keys, put something totally random on top of them, like a rubber chicken, anything that makes you stop and actually think.
It's like you're tricking your brain into paying attention.
Exactly. Disrupting those automatic responses is key.
Okay, that's genius. So we've covered focus, we've covered memory, two pretty essential brain functions. But what about the stuff that really drives us, The motivation, the feeling good. That's where those neurotransmitter conductors really come into play, right?
You got it. Let's start with everyone's favorite, dopamine, the reward chemical.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Dopamine, it's like our brain's internal reward system, right?
Exactly. It's that surge of satisfaction you get when you achieve a goal, experience something new, or even just anticipate something good.
So if you're feeling stuck, maybe just trying something new, even something small, can give your brain that dopamine boost it craves.
Now you're getting it. And it really doesn't have to be like a huge life change. Even trying a new coffee shop or taking a different route to work those little novelties, they can really add up.
I love that. Little wins, big impact. Okay, but what about when we need to be super focused? Like facing a challenge, deadline looming. That's where norepinephrine comes in, right?
Exactly. If dopamine is the reward, think of norepinephrine as like the alert system. It's that surge of energy and focus you feel when you're under a bit of pressure.
Okay, so it's not always about feeling good. Sometimes it's about, like, harnessing those slightly more intense brain chemicals. Got to get stuff done, right?
That's right. Think of it as your brain's way of saying, okay, time to focus. It helps you prioritize, think clearly when it matters most.
So how do we tap into that? Is it just about, like, chugging coffee before a big meeting?
Well, Pereira's got healthier strategies, thankfully. She's a big advocate for like setting clear goals and breaking down those big, overwhelming tasks into smaller chunks.
That makes a lot of sense. Keeps that norepinephrine flowing, but in a good way.
Exactly. It's about working with your brain's natural stress response, not letting it control you.
Right. Working smarter, not harder. Okay. On the flip side, though, we need to wind down sometimes. De-stress. That's where GABA comes in, right? The calm composer, as Pereira calls it.
You got it. Think of GABA as your brain's natural chill pill. It slows down those racing thoughts and just like helps you relax.
We could all use a bit of that. So how does GABA actually work?
Well, Pereira says it's crucial for good sleep. And we know how important sleep is for, well, everything, especially brain power.
Right. Sleep is definitely underrated.
Yeah.
So how do we boost GABA naturally? Asking for a friend.
Well, Pereira's a huge advocate for mindfulness and meditation. Even just a few minutes a day can make a world of difference.
I've heard that, but, actually doing it.
Right. But she also talks about like movement and spending time in nature. Simple things, but they send a signal to your brain that it's okay to relax and recharge.
It's fascinating how those simple things, a walk in the park, can have such a huge impact on, literally our brain chemistry.
Right. And speaking of brain chemistry, we can't forget about cortisol, that infamous stress hormone.
Ah, yes, cortisol, the friend who always overstays their welcome. But really, why is managing it so important?
Well, in small doses, it's not all bad. Cortisol gives us that energy to tackle challenges. The problem is when we're chronically stressed, cortisol just stays elevated. That's when it starts messing with our brains and bodies.
So basically, chronic stress is like having your cortisol stuck on high all the time.
Pretty much. And get this, Pereira actually says it can shrink the prefrontal cortex.
What? No way. So stress is literally shrinking the part of our brain responsible for, like, decision-making, focus, all of that.
It's true. It also makes us more reactive, emotional, less able to, think clearly and rationally.
Okay, that's terrifying. How do we break that cycle? How do we keep cortisol in check?
Pereira has some interesting strategies here. She talks about the importance of like building mastery in something. Doesn't matter if it's a hobby, a skill, even just a part of your work you enjoy.
So that feeling of accomplishment, of being good at something, it can actually counteract stress.
Exactly. She also says planning is huge. When we feel more in control of our time and tasks, it reduces that sense of overwhelm that leads to, chronic stress.
It's about feeling empowered, not just reacting to everything life throws at us.
You got it. And this might sound counterintuitive, but she also talks about leaning into your interests, even if they seem totally unrelated to work or being productive.
Wait, so you're saying like taking a break to pursue my passion for, I don't know, underwater basket weaving could actually make me more productive overall?
Exactly. It's about giving your brain a break, a chance to recharge, refocus.
It all comes back to balance, right?
Always. Now, before we move on, remember those neuropeptides Pereira mentioned earlier? We should probably unpack those.
Right. We talk about neurotransmitters, but how are they different from neuropeptides? What even are they?
Think of them like the VIPs of your brain's communication system.
Okay, I like it. VIPs.
They're like neurotransmitters, yeah, but they've got a wider range, kind of act more like hormones in some ways.
Interesting.
Pereira focuses on 3: opioids, oxytocin, and vasopressin.
Okay, let's unpack those. Opioids, though, that sounds kind of, I don't know, intense. Are we talking about the same opioids you hear about in the news?
Well, yes and no. You see, our brains, they actually make their own natural opioids. Endorphins, for example.
Oh, right. Endorphins.
Exactly. Like when you get that runner's high or even just a good laugh. Natural pain relievers, mood boosters. Remember those dopamine hits?
Yeah.
Opioids are part of what makes those rewards feel so good.
So it's not about, like, demonizing all opioids. It's more about understanding how they fit into our natural reward system.
Exactly. Okay, so oxytocin, often called the love hormone.
Ooh, now this one sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Connection, social bonding, that's oxytocin's domain. Think warm hugs, deep conversations with close friends, even just cuddling a pet.
Yeah.
Those trigger oxytocin release. Builds trust, empathy, all those good vibes we associate with, like belonging.
So oxytocin, it's like the glue that holds our relationships together.
You could say that. And then we've got vasopressin. If oxytocin builds the connections, vasopressin's like the protector of those bonds.
Okay, I see.
Loyalty, protectiveness, setting boundaries in relationships, that's vasopressin.
So it makes sure we don't lose those connections that oxytocin helped us build.
Precisely. It's really incredible how these chemical messengers work together. And here's the cool part. When we understand them, we can actually make choices that support them,
Yeah, totally.
Spend time with loved ones, express gratitude, even just small acts of kindness. Those can all give you a nice boost of those feel-good neuropeptides.
We have more control than we realize, huh?
We really do. It's empowering. It's not about manipulating your brain. It's about working with it.
I love that. To live happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives.
Exactly.
Now, Pereira, she wraps up her article talking about creativity, right? And she makes this point that it's not some, like, magical gift. It's a skill we can develop.
Right. We all have that potential, that innate creativity. It's just about tapping into it.
So how do we do that? Where do we even begin?
Start simple, she says. Don't put pressure on yourself to, create a masterpiece right away. Just play around with some everyday objects. Use them as a springboard for new ideas.
So it's about shifting your perspective.
Exactly, like a child seeing things for the first time. She also talks about paying attention to your energy levels. When do you feel most creative, most alert?
Yeah, good point. For me, it's definitely mornings.
Right, but it's different for everyone. And then, of course, minimize distractions. That's key.
Makes sense. Hard to be creative when your brain's being pulled in a million directions.
You said it. It's about giving yourself that mental space. Oh, and another thing, creativity thrives on curiosity. So ask questions, explore new things. Don't be afraid to, get a little uncomfortable.
That beginner's mindset, right?
Yes. It's about approaching life and your own brain with that sense of wonder, of possibility.
I love that. This has been such an incredible deep dive. Really makes you realize we have so much more agency over our brains than we think.
We really do.
So, to wrap up, what's one thing our listeners can take away from all this? One action step they can start today?
That's a good question. I'd say choose one small thing you want to change, whether it's taming distractions, boosting focus, whatever, and just try one of Pereira's techniques. See what happens.
Experiment. I love it.
It's all about finding what works best for you.
And for everyone listening, if you want to dive even deeper into all of this, we highly recommend checking out Marynês Pereira's full article, Embrace Genius: Essential Tips to Turbocharge Your Brain. Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the amazing world of the human brain. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.